It was supposed to be one of professional wrestling's fairy tale romances, a relationship that we as fans got to see blossom before our very eyes. Real life got in the way, however, momentarily turning the smitten sweethearts into sworn enemies thanks to the intervention of a third party who you could say lived up to his ultimate opportunist nickname. The love triangle between Lita, Matt Hardy, and Edge captivated the wrestling world, with the behind-the-scenes shenanigans proving far juicier than anything actually on Raw or SmackDown. Art would soon imitate life, though, when this actually began to play out on television, further muddying the waters and forcing viewers to question what was a work and what was a shoot. Turns out there was a lot more than meets the eye when it came to how it all unfolded both in real life and in the squared circle. My name's Jack from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is the true story of the Lita, Matt Hardy, and Edge love triangle. "1999 was an important year in the careers of the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and Lita. Matt and Jeff received their first major WWE push after years working on the undercard, which included winning the tag team titles for the first time on Raw. Edge and Christian, meanwhile, said goodbye to the Ministry of Darkness, and eventually goodbye to Gangrel as well, and began to make a name for themselves in the tag team division. All four men truly put themselves on the map with an incredible show-stealing ladder match at that year's No Mercy. As Mick Foley put it, this match, this high-risk outing, transformed them from WWE wrestlers to WWE superstars. And it also ensured that their rivalry would play a part on WWE TV for the foreseeable future. It was around this time that Amy Dumas signed with the company, having previously wrestled on the Indies and for ECW under the names of Angelica and Miss Congeniality. Dumas knew Matt and Jeff well since they'd had a hand in her training after they met her at an NWA Mid-Atlantic show in early 1999. Though Lita would be introduced to WWE fans as the manager and partner of light heavyweight champion Essa Rios on February 13th, 2000, it wouldn't take long before she left the luchador for the Hardy Boys. As Team Extreme, Matt, Jeff, and Lita were now one of the most over acts of the era. Their bond with their Canadian counterparts also continued to grow during this period, with Edge later describing Lita as his closest female friend in the business. It was Edge, for example, who apparently suggested that Lita bring what would become her signature exposed underwear look to television after accompanying her to try on clothes before a show. By the time Lita and the Hardys became an on-screen unit, Lita and Matt were already dating in real life. This fact was confirmed to WWE fans when the two shared a passionate kiss on the February 19th, 2001 episode of Monday Night Raw. Though dissension within the ranks was teased towards the end of that year, Team Extreme continued to thrive, until Lita went down with a disastrous injury in April 2002. While she routinely performed various daredevil moves in the ring, it was actually on the set of the television series Dark Angel where Lita, who was booked to be a guest star on the show, broke her neck. While attempting her signature Hurricane Rana, the stuntwoman who was entrusted with taking the move failed to do so correctly and dropped Lita straight down on her head and neck. A potentially career-ending injury, Lita would be required to step away from the ring for at least a year as a result. With their manager set to be on the sidelines for a while, WWE finally split the Hardys up, with Matt moving to SmackDown and pursuing a solo career. The older Hardy boy thrived on the blue brand thanks to his inventive Matt Hardy version 1 gimmick and managed to make a name for himself as a singles competitor, capturing the Cruiserweight Championship in the process. While Matt was on SmackDown, Edge, who was set for one of the biggest pushes of his career, also went down with a broken neck and was booked in for fusion surgery in February 2003. Lita would later reflect on her time away from the business, noting that while she was at home, she began not to just consider her career, but her personal life as well. She would admit that while she loved Matt, she wasn't so sure they would necessarily end up growing old together, as their main bond was their work, but their outside interests didn't necessarily align. Following a long road to recovery, Lita was able to return to the ring in September 2003. When she came back, she naturally wanted to travel with her boyfriend and asked Matt if he would consider putting in a request to swap brands and come back to Raw. He did, and although they were not initially an item on Raw, the two reunited on the April 19th, 2004 episode of the show. This reunion took place the night after Backlash, a pay-per-view which saw a fully recovered Edge wrestle his first match in over a year. So it appeared as though things were going quite well for everyone, but sadly, Matt would also get get bitten by the injury bug. He was forced to undergo reconstructive knee surgery to repair damage to his MCL and ACL once his summer program with Kane had run its course. With Matt on the shelf, the careers of Lita and Edge went from strength to strength. Edge was presented as a would-be main event level heel, while Lita defeated Trish Stratus to capture the Women's Championship in the historic main event of the December 6, 2004 episode of Raw. It was towards the end of 2004 that Edge and Lita began traveling together. Matt would later say that Lita didn't like traveling by herself, and since she supposedly didn't get along too well with some of the other divas at the time, Lita suggested she hop in a car with Edge, who was also traveling alone back then. Matt didn't think anything of it, since he was close with Edge and trusted him implicitly. Furthermore, Edge had only just married his second wife, a woman named Lisa Ortiz, on October 21st. His previous marriage had been to Alana Morley, the sister of fellow WWE star Val Venus. So, while Matt was at home, not only intensely rehabbing his knee, but also planning for his future with the woman he believed he would one day marry, his girlfriend and one of his closest friends were getting to know each other on a deeper level during the long drives between towns. Realizing that they had a lot more in common than they initially thought, their platonic relationship quickly turned romantic. While this secret affair was still very young, Lita was dealt another major injury setback. At the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view on January 9, 2005, the women's champion suffered a torn ACL and damaged her meniscus while performing a Thez press off the ring apron just minutes into her title defense against Trish Stratus. She underwent surgery 4 days later, and outside of a few public appearances, she was pretty much sent home to recuperate until she was ready to come back to work properly. It was also in early January that Edge's wife Lisa called Matt and voiced her concerns over how frequently her husband and his girlfriend had been calling each other on the phone. Matt brought this up, but Lita shrugged off suggestions that anything untoward was going on, and things continued as normal. For a while anyway, because then Matt started to notice Lita acting a little bit stranger around Valentine's Day. One evening, Matt's curiosity got the better of him, and while Lita was sleeping, he picked up her phone and listened to her voicemail messages. What he proceeded to hear was Adam Copeland professing his love for her, claiming that he couldn't be without her and how he needed to know whether she wanted to be with him or Matt. Naturally, this floored the North Carolina native. After being confronted with the evidence in the early hours of the morning, Lita admitted the affair, was kicked out of the house, and drove to her mother's place in Atlanta, Georgia in a daze. Matt also called Edge to let him know that he knew about the affair, and, well, let's just say some colourful language was apparently used, and a threat or two may have been dished out. Wrestling fans began to twig that something was up when Matt had all pictures of Lita removed from his personal website in early March. Fueling speculation, Matt alluded to the drama on his message board, telling fans, "If you happen to run into Amy at an appearance, I think you should ask her why her pictures have been taken down." He also added the Matt fact, Matt hates being lied to and having his trust broken, to the site's homepage, V1 still living on there. I think we all have enough experience in the field to know that these are the classic symptoms of a heartbroken man, surely. Thomas Simpson, longtime friend and promoter of Omega Wrestling, the North Carolina-based indie the Hardys worked for before making it to WWE, was one of the first to speak publicly about what had happened, and he wrote, "Amy Dumas lied to Matt. Amy broke Matt's trust. While Matt told me the story of lies and deceit, I heard so much pain and anguish in his voice that it brought me to tears. I'm still shocked and saddened at the pain that Matt has been caused by all of this. What is even more heartbreaking is the other man that precipitated the lies was supposedly one of Matt's better friends." Matt confirmed Thomas's account, while Lita took to her own website to write, "I'm going through some tough stuff personally right now. I hope you guys can respect my privacy," and she implored fans not to post about her private life. Now, while all of this was going on, WWE was set to run a house show and a Raw taping in North Carolina, which, of course, is Hardy country. Although he was not yet cleared to return to action, Matt had been due at the taping on March 7th in Raleigh, but was then asked to stay at home by WWE management. WWE also had to alter bookings to weekend autograph sessions that was supposed to feature both Matt and Lita. Matt continued to post about the situation on his website, writing, "Just for the record, I never told anyone the story in its entirety until news sites on the internet started breaking the story, and there's still a ton of appalling things you guys don't know. I took down Amy's pictures on my site and in my house because they were sickening to look at. When the story started coming out, in no form or fashion was I going to allow myself to look like the bad guy. I couldn't afford, personally or professionally, to let an incorrect version of the story stand. I just wish you guys could have experienced the truth and saw what actually happened. You can take my word for what it's worth in your eyes and heart. Adam Copeland is feces. As upset as I am with Amy now, I still care about her and I would hate to see her destroy her life. The feces' track record speaks for itself." And by the way, I'm not using the word feces in an attempt to try and circumvent YouTube's arbitrary censorship rules there. That was the actual word that Matt used. Interestingly, Matt and Lita were spotted at a 7 Seconds concert in Greensboro on March 10th and even posed for a photo with the band's lead singer, prompting speculation that this whole thing might have been one elaborate work. Matt confirmed that it was not a work, he wished that was the case, but that he and Lita now had no issues sharing a public space. He just, he wanted to kill Edge and stuff. But what many people did not know was that Matt, Edge, and Lita had all met up at a hotel prior to the March 7th Raw in Raleigh. Looking for a way to move forward and work with each other professionally once Matt was back on the road, Hardy suggested to Edge that he go to Vince McMahon and request to be moved over to SmackDown. Edge wasn't too keen on that, according to Matt's account, and also he reiterated his love for Amy. In the end, nothing was resolved, but at least the two didn't come to blows. The situation continued to cause headaches for WWE. At the March 14th Raw taping in Atlanta, security were ordered to confiscate any signs that mentioned Hardy, Lita, and Edge together. Also at the taping, a small but vocal section of fans booed whenever Lita was shown on screen, even though WWE didn't use real audience noise for her segments. WWE returned to the Carolinas for a pair of house shows on March 19th and 20th. Matt had been advertised for these shows, but he was pulled from them by head of talent relations John Laurinaitis, who feared that a fight might break out backstage. Despite being unbooked, Hardy showed up at one of these shows anyway, partly in a bid to show people in the locker room that he was able to coexist with Edge. After the show, Matt went out with friends, including Shannon Moore, who was involved in a head-on collision with a drunk driver at about 1 a.m, but thankfully, Shannon only suffered minor injuries in the accident. Edge, meanwhile, drove from North Carolina to Columbia, South Carolina for the next day's show. It was there that his rental car was vandalized, with the vehicle's tires slashed by an unknown assailant. People naturally assumed that Matt was the culprit, but his presence was accounted for in another town. According to Matt, and by the way, viewer beware, because things are going to really start sounding like high school gossip at this point. But apparently, Jason Arndt, aka former Mean Street Posse member Joey Abs, had spread the rumor that Matt had put a so-called hit out on Edge, and that when they couldn't get the so-called hit done, they just messed with his car instead. Now, the reason for this, Matt claims anyway, is because after kicking Lita out of his house, he had called up a woman named Lori Barber. She was an old flame who, at the time, was dating Joey Abs, and the two of them had rekindled their physical relationship. Now, obviously, when Arndt, or Joey Abs, heard about this, Hardy says he became jealous and spread false information to the WWE office. Things get even murkier, though, because Lori Barber had apparently left Matt for Joey Abs in the first place when the two of them initially dated many years prior. Adding to Edge's misery, he was then bombarded by signs and chants on the Carolina shows, stuff like "You screwed Matt" and "Matt will kill you." And while there had been an order in place to confiscate any pro-Hardy signs, that weekend's lead road agent, Arn Anderson, just made the call to cancel that, saying that people had paid their hard-earned money and could bring whatever signs they wanted. And obviously Edge, as you can imagine, wasn't exactly thrilled about that. But as bad as he might have thought he had it, Matt Hardy had things much worse, and they were about to get even more worse. With his knee now all healed up, Matt was raring to go in the ring. If his personal life was a mess, perhaps going back to work would provide a welcome distraction. As he was waiting for the call with his new start date and schedule, Hardy was instead wished the best of luck in his future endeavors by John Laurinaitis. That's right, Johnny Ace informed Matt that they were exercising their right to terminate his contract on April 11th, 2005. And just a day beforehand, Matt had been trying to get into better ring shape by doing all-out training matches with indie worker Crazy K. But citing that classic old reason that creative had nothing for him, Johnny Ace also told the former tag team champion that they just wanted to try new talent out. Matt obviously saw clear through these reasons, and apparently also suspected that Laurinaitis might have enjoyed giving him his marching orders. That's because the two had long been at odds with each other, stemming back to a situation when Matt was trying to gain momentum on SmackDown in late 2002. Back then, the Blue Brand's then writer, Paul Heyman, had suggested that Matt be credited with putting Rey Mysterio out of action, with the luchador needing a short layoff to undergo arthroscopic knee surgery. This would then set up a program between Matt and Rey upon Rey's return. It all makes sense. However, John Laurinaitis overruled Heyman and successfully lobbied to have A-Train take Matt's place. And whether this was lingering beef between Laurinaitis and Matt Hardy or not didn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things, because after his 90-day non-compete clause had expired, Matt would have to focus on the realities of earning a living on the independent scene and internationally, and most likely as a member of the TNA roster as well. Hardy's fans, thousands of which signed an online petition calling for WWE to rehire him, may have been upset at the news of his release, but Edge's estranged wife Lisa Ortiz was much more so. On April 14th, Ortiz sent the McMahons, and anyone else whose information she could get hold of, copies of Edge's private emails and chastised the company for firing Hardy when it was Adam and Amy who had been the transgressors. The bottom line, as far as WWE were concerned, was that Edge was the bigger star and was currently in the middle of a sizable push, and that Matt had just made things worse by being so public about everything. The tire slashing incident had really sealed his fate as well, whether Matt was actually responsible or not, and WWE felt they needed to protect themselves from any issues happening backstage. For what it's worth, when Laurinaitis had tried to talk to Edge about the situation, he had told the head of talent relations that it was personal and that it didn't concern him, while also bringing up several other not-so-secret examples of affairs that everyone in the locker room knew was going on. This, also coupled with the general sentiment that Matt got a very raw deal, made Edge something of a pariah among his peers, and he was shunned along with Lita. On screen, however, the winner of the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match just continued his ascension up the card, demonstrating management's faith in his abilities as a performer. And yes, the chants of "you screwed Matt, you screwed Matt" may have been a very bitter reminder of his mistakes, but hey, he was a heel, and heat was heat at the end of the day. The same, though, cannot be said for Lita, however, who was given the very difficult task of portraying a sympathetic babyface, helping to train 2004 Diva Search winner Christy Hemme for her WrestleMania showdown with Trish Stratus, before then Lita would resume her feud with the women's champion. And Lita had to put up with smatterings of chants and boos aimed at her, and kind of coped well enough with the distraction until things came to a head inside the world's most famous arena. On April 18th, Raw emanated from Madison Square Garden, a venue which has long been viewed as the barometer for fan sentiment within the promotion. WWE, in their infinite wisdom, or maybe it was stubbornness, decided to book Edge and Lita in back-to-back segments on the show. Opening the program, Edge competed in a singles match with Chris Benoit, which went to a no contest after just 5 minutes and 24 seconds of action. The bout may have been brief, but there was certainly enough time for those inside the world's most famous arena to shower Edge with catcalls, including a deafening chant of "you screwed Matt." Lita, on the other hand, was like a lamb to the slaughter during her in-ring promo segment with Trish Stratus. The Madison Square Garden faithful were so loud and vitriolic with their booing and chanting towards her that it totally ruined the segment, and threw Trish, who was the heel trying to hold things together, completely off her game. Matt said afterwards that he enjoyed seeing things go off the rails and thanked the fans for their public support. And things got worse when Edge's estranged wife Lisa, who had moved out of their house and was now living with her family in Colorado, posted a long and damning letter to Matt's website. Accusing both Adam and Amy of using steroids to achieve their superstar physiques, Lisa also claimed that she had photos of bruises on her face from when he had thrown her down, and continued to point the finger at them and WWE for handling the fallout of the affair so badly. On April 20th, Matt himself commented on the ongoing drama in his first interview since being fired with Between the Ropes. He said he was both surprised and not surprised by his release, questioned whether it could be considered wrongful termination, and felt WWE had taken the easy way out by doing it, but also that he had enjoyed his time in WWE and had nothing bad to say about Vince McMahon, even if his departure left a sour taste in his mouth. He said also that he would go back if he was asked, but he did concede that the odds of that happening were pretty slim. 5 days later, on the Opie and Anthony radio show, Matt continued to vent, admitting that he would love to beat the hell out of Edge and encouraging fans to keep aiming derogatory chants at Edge and Lita, and he noted that he had already received offers to team up again with Jeff on the independent scene. And while we mentioned Jeff, actually, he had apparently reacted passionately to the news of the affair when it first broke, leaving an expletive-filled voicemail on Edge's phone. He also spoke with Lita, who he was still close with, but ended the call with the sense that their friendship would no longer be the same as it once was. Matt continued to speak out publicly, including an interview with the Charleston Post-Courier, where he revealed he had been looking for engagement rings before finding out about the affair, and how he hoped a reconciliation with Lita was still possible. Finally, on the May 16th, 2005 episode of Raw, WWE at last decided to do the smart thing and turn Lita heel, only a month or two too late. Not only did she turn heel, though, she did so by aligning herself with Edge. Lita betrayed Kane on screen by helping Edge defeat him in the finals of the Gold Rush tournament before they embraced and, passionately made out on stage, and there'd be a lot of this over the next year or so, trust me. On the June 20th edition of Raw, WWE presented the televised wedding, oh yes, a wrestling wedding, of Edge and Lita. Towards the end of the hilariously over-the-top ceremony, fans received a shock when, after the priest asked if anyone knew why they should not be joined in holy matrimony, Matt Hardy's entrance music played. And wouldn't you know it, they damn got us. It was a sublime troll job by sports entertainment's most gratuitous couple. Matt wasn't in the building at all. So yes, the sensei of Mattitude might not have shown up, but Kane did, and he ended the segment by tombstone piledrivering the priest, naturally. Afterwards, Matt told a European reporter that WWE was simply rubbing his nose in it now with this tease and that he was not heading back. At an indie show 5 days after the wedding episode, Matt did a promo where he once again referred to Edge as feces, and this time he called Lita a slut. As you might be able to gather by that last comment, Matt was pretty mad at his ex for going along with this angle and using aspects of their real-life relationship in the feud with the Big Red Machine. Matt and Lita may not have been getting back together, but Matt and WWE were talking about working together again. Even though Matt had indie bookings for companies like Ring of Honor and was being publicly courted by TNA, it was rumored that he had either agreed to return or would likely agree to return in order to work a program with Edge and Lita. And finally, suspicions were confirmed on the July 11th edition of Raw when Matt attacked Edge both before and after the Rated R Superstars match with Kane. Presented as a shoot, Matt first struck Edge in the backstage area before being chased off by John Laurinaitis and road agent Steve Keirn, then came back later to jump his adversary again in the ring. Once they'd been separated by security and referees, Matt commandeered the microphone and cut a promo referring to Edge by his real name of Adam, as well as calling him a bastard, and calling Lita a whore and vowing to make their lives miserable, while also plugging Ring of Honor. Handcuffed and ejected from the building, Matt continued to spit venom in the direction of Laurinaitis and proclaimed that WWE could kiss his ass. This was designed to look as real as possible, and the angle created some doubt amongst fans about what was staged and what was unscripted. The truth is, Hardy had reached a deal to return to WWE in mid-June once Lita and Edge had agreed to go through with the proposed storyline. The tease during their wedding angle had been just that, a tease put in at the behest of Vince McMahon, who wanted some sort of official kayfabe beginning for the impending feud. And as a means of misdirection, Matt had written a lengthy commentary on his website ripping on the company and criticizing the recent releases of a pregnant Dawn Marie and the just returned from their honeymoon newlyweds Charlie Haas and Jackie Gator. He also plugged his indie dates and praised TNA and did nothing to promote any sort of grudge with Edge, so he was really trying to be convincing here. 2 days after his shocking return, Matt Hardy called into WWE internet show Bite This and confronted guest Lita, the two engaging in a very heated back and forth, which ended with Lita walking off the set. Earlier in the show, Lita had said that she was in love with Edge, even though in real life that wasn't the case and they were no longer together. As Matt continued to honor his indie commitments on the weekends, his feud with Edge went full speed ahead on Monday nights. Vince McMahon officially welcomed Matt back to WWE on the August 1st episode of Raw, and Matt beat Snitsky in his return match a week later. But this was a mere warm-up for what this had all been building towards, the first singles meeting between Matt Hardy and Edge. The second match on a stacked SummerSlam card, the initial Hardy-Edge clash really failed to produce the spark that the fans and the performers themselves had hoped for. Short and fiery with a liberal amount of potatoes and receipts and oh, it's a shoot being thrown back and forth, the match then came to a premature end when the referee deemed that Matt could no longer continue after being dropped face first on the ring post. Their SummerSlam outing may have been a disappointment on the whole, but the finish at least I guess helped to further the story and set the stage for future matches down the road. And as it happens, we'd only have to wait 8 days for Matt and Edge to go at it again, this time in a street fight on Raw. This was a major improvement over the pay-per-view match. In fact, this really should have been the match that was on the pay-per-view. Given just shy of 20 minutes and with a fitting stipulation to play with, the two of them produced a wild and engaging brawl. But the finish was once again inconclusive, the match ending in a no contest after Matt delivered a side effect to Edge off the side of the entrance stage into some electrical equipment below. Now by this point, the shoot aspect of the feud had been dialed down a bit. The two still laid in their shots when they worked together, yes, but professionalism was maintained and no liberties were taken by either man while the storyline took a more traditional turn. The Unforgiven pay-per-view on September 18th would prove to be the rivalry's high point, both figuratively and literally. At the end of a thrilling contest that was even better than their gripping street fight weeks earlier, Matt ascended to the top of the steel structure and finished off his foe with a massive leg drop. Edge would later say that regardless of everything the two men had been through over the past 6 or so months, there was nobody else he would want to look up and see standing on top of the cage more than Matt Hardy. Backstage, things had thawed between Matt and Lita too, with reports indicating that they had been socializing again on the road after shows. Matt was clearly in a better personal place this time, and he'd also begun to date 2005 Diva Search winner Ashley Mazzaro around this time. With one win apiece and one match ruled a no contest, a final match between the two was booked for the loaded Raw Homecoming show on October 3rd. On the 3-hour spectacular, back when that was a novelty, to celebrate Raw's return to the USA Network, Matt and Edge met in a ladder match where the winner would gain possession of the Money in the Bank briefcase and the loser would have to leave the red brand. It was hardly a shock to see Edge prevail since he was still penciled in for a major push and WWE had no desire to take the briefcase off him. This match was another good one too, even if it had 9 minutes cut from it. For Hardy, he would have to do some rebuilding on SmackDown, and the change of scenery allowed him opportunities away from the distraction of Edge and Lita. Reflecting on their real life and on-screen feud when all was said and done, Matt, Edge and Lita all agreed there were things that they would have all done done differently if they were able to go back in time and do them again. In saying that, all three believed their careers benefited from the work they did together on television. What started in a lot of controversy and personal pain and all that sort of stuff, it all turned into something quite productive that all three could be proud of, with the Rated R couple in particular using the momentum gained from the storyline and parlaying that into the first WWE title win for Edge at New Year's Revolution 2006. Having her personal life made so public did, though, understandably take its toll on Lita, the Hall of Famer later admitting that she dreaded going to work during this era and considered quitting on several occasions. She may have been one half of one of the hottest acts in wrestling at the time, but it was to the detriment of her physical and mental health. Lita did end up leaving WWE after the 2006 Survivor Series when she opted not to renew her contract. Receiving an undignified send-off angle courtesy of Crime Time, Lita wasn't exactly feeling great about her exit after the show. But her mood got better when she was taken to a bowling alley where a certain someone had arranged a going-away party with many of her closest friends and family members. And that certain someone was a 6'5" Canadian with long blonde hair. Hey, say what you want about the so-called ultimate opportunist, but the man clearly does have a heart and stuck by Lita through the good times and the bad. And it's good to say that close to 20 years on, obviously, everybody has just moved on with their lives. Lita is a beloved icon whose presence is always welcomed whenever she returns, and she continues to work with WWE on various projects. Matt Hardy is married, has 4 children, and currently works for AEW, and Edge is married to fellow Hall of Famer Beth Phoenix, and the couple have 2 children of their own. I guess it all turned out alright in the end, didn't it? Unless you're Joey Abs, I suppose.